Okay, hello everyone. It's Sascha here from Infosecurity, and I'm sitting across from a wonderful, wonderful person, Mirko, who is the founder of Ashwin, who we've had the pleasure of meeting in the past in Germany. And every time I meet him, he tells me more and more interesting information about security.
Yes. Hi. Thank you very much, and a pleasure to be in your show. Yes.
Yeah, wonderful. Welcome. So, I mean, it's a new year. It's still fresh. It's a new 2020, a new decade. And of course, a lot of security topics to cover. But what I'm interested in is IoT and 5G. Now, I know that you are a little bit of a specialist in this area. So what's the new world going to look like in this year with IoT devices going into 2020?
Yes. First of all, I think what we see is, of course, that the trend is still ongoing in terms of the numbers of devices we will see, because I think there will be now billions of devices will be connected, and it's just continuing. So we'll see much more IoT devices, especially in the industrial sector now. So because we have seen now, even I think currently it's CES, and there is no device which is almost no smart device there. So the consumer industry is completely on the smart trend now. We see the industry following up. We see a lot of stuff like autonomous cars will pop up. So the trend is ongoing. That's definitively the main message. And the second message is, of course, the cybersecurity concerns and vulnerabilities and exploits and hacks and whatever will be as well trending also for this year.
Yeah, and it's also the numbers. I think for many people, we're looking at probably something, as you mentioned, 20, 25 billion devices that are going to be connected. And I think you mentioned CES, which is going on right now in Las Vegas. And I think that they're talking and releasing this new standard. I think it's OCF, right? They're trying to unify and have some kind of compatibility standard. Because at this point, I think, from your experience as well, I think most of the IoT and smart devices, they're often not really compatible with each other and have a lot of backdoors and security flaws. So how do you see this going into next year? Is there going to be more standards from Europe, from the EU, from America? Will this be the year of standards?
First of all, I think the good message is that the pressure from the regulation side is popping up. So we have this year, 2020, that the California cybersecurity bill is going into force. So there's definitely regulation in California pushing vendors towards more cybersecurity. And we have in Europe the Cybersecurity Act, which has already started in last year, but no one was recognizing it. But now, 2020, the work on executing the act is starting. And this will go towards IoT, cloud, AI, to all ICT areas which are important. And there will be certification schemes. And so this will be pushing regulation to certification schemes, which means the industry has to think about the standards and how to fulfill this kind of schemes.
Mm-hmm. And about these schemes, I mean, I know that last year, end of last year in 2019, November, that Traficom through Finland has started its own certification program with several smart devices, which is based off of this ETSI European certification standard. So, coming out of Scandinavia, of course, we have great things that have come out of there in the past. Is this kind of for you a signal that we're going to have more of this high level and more awareness, consumer awareness? Because I think at the end of the day, people and consumers are actually afraid of all these connected devices. We have more of them. So will you see this more of a push into also governments this year?
Yes, we'll see this year, next year, absolutely a push on that direction, because what will happen is, like, I mean, you mentioned that trust certification seal, and I mean, we have a lot of this kind of private seals out there, and it's rather similar to organic food. So as a consumer, what kind of certification do you trust more? A private industry or the official one, which is supervised by the regulators or any, public institutions. And we'll see the same in the IoT. So the European Union will introduce labels, trust labels. And these trust labels will be definitively for IoT devices. And I think that's a very high value label, which is much better than any label you get from a private institution.
But into all of this, I like the phrase I read somewhere not too long ago. It was Internet of Things, but it's also been called by someone the splinter net of things, right? And as we've seen last year, especially with one of the leaders behind all this 5G, China, Huawei, and this whole trade war and like political battle between China and the United States, and also now with the European Union. How do you see that play out this year?
I mean, what we see is, I've heard a term, it's called decoupling. So what we see is that the economies, the Western economies and the Eastern economy are maybe on a process of decoupling. And of course, we see it already on the 5G is maybe one issue of decoupling. All this trade wars going on is an issue. Standardization is as well an issue. Like, what is if the Western standards and the Eastern standards are not working together? Yes, it's a concern that we'll see maybe more decoupling trends, which are leading into distrust. And of course, on an ICT product or IoT product, I mean, you see the product, but at the end, the product is made of hardware and of software, and you can't look into the software normally. So we need to trust the vendor. But it's even like if I buy a laptop, I mean, I have to trust that this product is good. And now we see a trend that I think global distrust is rising. Yeah. And it's a good question what kind of camera you will install in your home. The Chinese vendor camera or the US vendor camera or the European one? Yeah.
So it could very well be that we're going to have, from a consumer perspective, there might be a choice possibly at the end of the year or in the next few years to come that you can say, well, I want the Chinese security product, I want the European one, I want the American one. And then with that, having maybe possibly different types of security measures and then also the availability behind it.
I was thinking about it, but obviously it's not so easy. Let's have a look at a smart TVs. I mean, if you really look at how many brands for smart TVs are out there, but how many different hardware and software platforms are inside a smart TV, it's completely different. Because many of these TVs are just made by an OEM and they put a big brand on it. And it doesn't matter sometimes what kind of brand you're buying, it's always the same hardware and software inside. And it's, of course, mainly made in Asia. So it's getting more and more difficult, I think.
Yeah. And if we're looking also at sectors in terms of IoT devices, I mean, I very much believe that healthcare is probably one of the most prominent and the one we'll see the most probably with proliferation of smart devices. Do you see any other sort of sectors that will really proliferate with IoT devices and that might be at risk more than others?
I mean, of course, healthcare is the one which is getting the closest to the people. It's getting closest to the body. Even the IoT is getting inside the body. Like I had been on a conference and a guy from the audience was asking me, look, I have a module in my brain, which is an IoT connected product, and it's not more supported by the vendor with software updates. What should I do? I mean, this is the worst case we can think about IoT security because the software is getting into the brain. But I mean, what kind of other sectors? In general, I believe IoT is a broad trend. I mean, we see it everywhere. We see it in, getting into the smart home more and more, because maybe as a consumer you have less choice because the product is smart. And we see, of course, I think for this year and next year, the biggest trend is the car. Okay. Because think about how many time we are spending in the car.
Uh, So will 2020 be a year that you see more the consumer winning? I know we've seen so many attacks and threats last year, and with 5G proliferating more this year. Is this going to be the year of the consumer, or is this going to be the year of identity crisis for standards? How do you choose?
Ah, oh, that's a tough question. I would make no decision there. But to be honest, I think like what we see in 2020, unfortunately, would be a lot of pain. That's for sure. Because, however, what's going on on the regulation side, I think the industry still have to learn a lot of lessons. And learning lessons in industries are almost lessons which are only done if the pain is rather tough. So we will see definitively a lot of more breaches. A lot of more data will be lost because the supply chain inside the IoT device or the application is not secured. So that's definitely a trend. And maybe what we'll see as well, we will see the first big liability issues where maybe consumer organizations as well will go into law and will force vendors on better liability.
Okay.
Especially maybe in the US, because like when the California bill is now going into force, this is really a tough issue. Because we know as well the fines in the US for the consumer sector.
Yeah. We'll see also how other states and if other states will probably modify and include their own state laws to follow California.
Yeah, but California, it's like, designed in California. We know how many products are designed in California.
Yeah.
So that's definitely the state which is the main driver. Yeah.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see. So certainly growing pains in 2020. Lots more to talk about, but really want to thank you. That was my chat today here with Mirko Ross from Ashwin. Thank you so much for your time, and I know I'll see you soon again.
Sascha, thanks.